now.
Welcome to Burnt Out. The Burnt Out podcast shares the stories of firefighters, emergency personnel, and other first responders around the world to create a pathway to save lives. The stories you will hear are real and may be disturbing to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. And now I'd like to introduce you to your hosts for Burnt Out, Skip O and Jeff the Old Guy.
Hey, Sean, thank you for that introduction. I'd like to welcome everybody to Burnout Podcast myself. And we welcome any first responder, any family member on here. If you need help, you can reach out to us. And we got a lot of friends around the United States that can help you out. Also, I'd like to welcome my co-host, Jeff.
The Old Guy.
I was trying to be nice and not say the old guy, but since you said it, I'll say it.
Hey, the way I feel today is appropriate. But I want to remind everybody to go to burnoutpodcast.org and check out our sponsors here for this podcast. Really would appreciate it. And while you're there, check out some of the other links and phone numbers that you might find useful for yourself or others. That's my plug.
Well, Jeff, thank you very much. I appreciate you being on here. Also, I appreciate Julie and Goode for coming on here. How are you doing today, Julie?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you too?
I'm doing well. I'm just trying to keep up with Jeff. You know, because he's an old guy, but he's got a lot of energy, and I just can't keep up with him.
It's the coffee, man. It's just the coffee. The coffee in the East Coast. I don't know what we got out here today again. I feel like I'm still in Indianapolis. Rainy, cold, yucky. It feels the same.
Oh, what are you talking about? There was rainbows and unicorns walking around there that day at FDIC.
I'm glad you saw them. I didn't see that, but
you don't want to report from California then.
No.
Well, I tell you what, Julie, me and my wife, we traveled all the way to California. I'm from Indiana. We went to California. We was invited there from Colette and Paul. They have a wolf retreat, and they wanted to do a retreat for first responders. So while we were there for a few days, Colette had Julie come up because Colette's a therapist, and I'll let her tell you the correct terminology for that. And I met her, and we hit it off pretty quick and had a good time. So we thought it'd be a good idea for Julie to come on our podcast and share a little bit. So Julie, would you give like a 30-second to minute version of about what you do, your background, and then we'll go into the questions. Are you okay with that?
That'll be fine. Thank you. My name is Dr. Julianne Goode. I'm a clinical psychologist. I have been doing therapy work for 12 years. Recently, I switched over to doing first responder work because the need is so high right now, and there are not enough therapists that are doing this niche work. So I'm very proud to be doing this work. I started with a first responder inpatient facility that was up in northern LA County. I was a clinical director of the intensive outpatient program that was in downtown Los Angeles. And then I switched over to working with Dr. Heather Williams in Orange County and LA County with premier first responder psychological services. So I have been doing outpatient work with her. We are expanding our facilities out for firefighters, law enforcement, EMTs, and medical personnel, anybody that falls under that first responder umbrella, which is quite a huge umbrella. So it's been great to be doing that work lately, and I've been doing that in Orange and LA counties. And we're expanding out to San Diego County, so that's exciting. And then I just started a clinical director position at Throttle and Thrive in Palos Verdes Estates, which is a gorgeous facility that is inpatient rehabilitation for first responders only. It's a 6-bed facility for men. So we're very excited that that's opening up.
Wow, you wear a lot of different hats. You do a lot of different things. Sounds like you've been busy the last few years.
Oh, yes. And I just graduated with my doctorate last year, 14-year run on school. So I'm done with school.
I got a friend that's a doctor, Jeff. Her name's Julie, just FYI.
She's not qualified. She's way overqualified for this podcast, man. She's definitely the upper echelon here. So, Julie, I want to find out what you kind of touch base on is the first responders and how you see there's a need there and stuff like that. What did you do prior to this? I know we talked off the screen here about you working in ER. Tell me something about that and how it got you to do where you're at.
Yes, actually, when I was about 20 and going to school for my AA degree in Long Beach, I worked in an emergency room overnight as the admitting clerk, and that I consider to be first responder work because that I'm usually the first person that they would see at the window, and then I have to triage people. So from there, I went back to doing that work when I started my master's program. So I went back for about 5 years and worked in a facility in Huntington Beach that had a psych ward attached to it. So really, really busy. It was really interesting work, but I really got to see how all of the first responders really meshed under one roof under critical conditions. And some of the first responders that I would talk to, other than medical personnel, were really stressed out and showing signs of burnout.
Okay, I got that. And you started doing some podcasting after that too. Is that correct?
I was doing podcasting in my master's program. Actually, I had been interviewed about the work that I was doing at that time, which was working with parents and children of children who had been sexually abused. So that was one of my internships. And once I got into that studio, I said to the executive producer, "Hey, would you ever, be open to having a psychology show?" And he said yes. So luckily that studio was right around the corner from my school. So after doing 3 classes on Mondays, I'd go do a podcast and interview people on different psychological topics.
I tell you what, that's good stuff. It's like, when we get our podcast and you come over, I remember you told me you had a podcast. I go, well, we're amateurs. You could teach us something now. I just like it when things just kind of line up the way they're supposed to in the world. And you being on here and with all you do, it's just amazing that you're on our show. We're really, really grateful because we know right now there's somebody out there that's trying to learn. There's somebody out there that's suffering, that's lost, that needs to find direction. And I know you've worked at the other treatment facility. What's one of the similarities that you see in all first responders that come to you and see you?
I think one of the most prevalent issues is denial of how all of the calls that they've responded to have affected them, because it's a really deep situation of what's called compartmentalization. And it's, going to a call, it's stressful. They have to really focus in on the people who are most in crisis and then have to just offset everyone else around them. And I've noticed that these situations that really stick the most are the calls with children, especially if those first responders have children of their own, or if they're younger, they're in their 20s, they have brothers or sisters who are in the age category of the calls that they answer. Those seem to be the most sticking situations that, if they can just talk about it, release those experiences and all that energy that they hold on to, they are much better off for it. And a lot of times I do talk therapy with them first, and then I do the EMDR with them at about session 2 or 3, so that we get the trauma off of the baseline as quickly as possible.
Okay, you threw some letters out there. All right, I'm familiar with them. Skip's probably familiar with them, but I'd like to hear it again. EMDR. What is that?
EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It is one of the top trauma modalities to be using with people to get the trauma reprocessed off of people's minds. So, in simpler terms, it takes some of these traumatic events and it allows the person to talk about it, but not in the formal therapy session where they talk a little bit, then I talk a little bit. They do most of the talking, and they use what's called BLS, which is bilateral stimulation. I use either tapping on the body, which they do the tapping, or I've got the TheraTappers. I do not use the light bar because a lot of people have eye issues and they can't track like that. So I've been using the tapping for quite some time, and it's very effective. It allows people to make sense of the traumatic events that they've been through.
So this process, I've been through it. I've had it before and had pretty good results with it too. But what does it actually do? It's pulling out brain thoughts, memories from the past and bringing it back forward again so you can analyze them again. How does this really work with the brain?
Yeah, that's about what it does. But what it does is it allows the person to tell the trauma story. It allows them to be able to hear themselves talk out loud about it, because so many times when we've been through traumatic situations, we shut down because this part of our brain, the Broca's area, this part is our language center. And this part here, the prefrontal cortex, this is our reasoning and judgment. When we have a traumatic situation come at us, our brain usually goes to fight, flight, freeze, fold, no matter who we are, because that's an automatic process that's coming through. And then after the situation, after a person can get to safety, then a lot of times they cannot talk about it. They're shut down. They're trying to make sense of it. They may have a lot going on. They may be shaky. They hopefully have support as quickly as possible, but not a lot of people have that luxury almost of being able to talk about it right afterwards.
One thing I was going to ask, the percentage of first responders that you've seen that's done EMDR, which percentage have this helped?
Most of them. Most of them. The beautiful thing is I work differently with first responders. I try to get them in and out of therapy as quickly as possible because I know that they need to get back to work and they need to get back to life as soon as possible. So I would say a good majority of the first responders that I've worked with, this has really helped.
So how many sessions does it take? Does it take one and you're done, or it takes several? I mean, is there a textbook definition of how many sessions this takes?
There is not, but there have been several first responders that I have done what I call one and done sessions. They come into me, I get a little bit of background history, I do the EMDR, they go about their day, I check in with them the next day and they say, that event doesn't bother me as much anymore. I'm relieved I don't have the same anxiety load that I had.
I know, Julie, when I did EMDR, I was the biggest critic. In my mind, I said, this ain't going to work. This is, I'm sitting there doing that. Then I sat down, I had the clickers, and then we went through the first session, and I said, what just happened? And it was amazing, the results. I didn't know what happened, but something happened, and it got better. I was exhausted. I was worn out. I was emotional. But afterwards, it got better. And then I went into the second session, and then it got even. I just can't say enough about it. Just like what you're repeating and saying it. Everybody that I've talked to, except for one, and I don't think the person that did this person was qualified to do it, but almost 100% the people that I've talked to says it's worked and they love it.
Yes, and I'm. That's great that you had that positive experience, Skip. And you also had two, Jeff,
yeah.
correct? That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. But I want to ask it, because there's somebody listening to this and probably has the same apprehension that Skip and I had about this too. What is the chances of pulling out something out of the Pandora's box, for lack of a better explanation, and having it resonate back in a bad manner? Is there a possibility of that being restrung out again to the individual and then reliving that event in a negative manner?
Well,
you see what I'm saying here?
I do. And yes, that can happen because people go through that period afterwards of maybe a few days to maybe up to a week where, that's pulling up more memories, and then that it may be triggering nightmares or more vivid dreams. That's definitely a possibility. What I have them do, though, I emphasize to them, if you have any problems with this afterwards, please contact me as soon as possible. Text me and I will get in touch with you. Every once in a while, that will happen with a client, whether it's a first responder or the general public that I work with. So it does happen every once in a while, but that has a tendency to be people who have complex trauma that stems from childhood moving forward, because a lot of times that will happen. It can be jarring, especially after the first session, because people are not used to this type of therapy unless they've undergone it.
Yeah, I know for me, I went in there, thought I was going to work on the runs, and it went back to my childhood. That's where my mind floated back to, and it worked it out. I got a safe place to go, and they had me figure out what's a safe place for you, and did that. But there's EMDR, and also done brain spotting, and that's similar to it's fixed eye location. I can't explain it very well how I done it, but I've done that before. Do you have any other, like there's EMDR, brain spotting? Is there some other things out there for first responders that you know of, similar to those things?
Other than biofeedback, no. And I'm hoping that we're going to be able to get that in the Throttle and Thrive facility, because we definitely have the room for it. So, but right now it's cost effectiveness. It's pretty pricey to have one of those setups, and so, but that's my wish list coming up. And also, I went to a documentary recently that was 911. I forgot the last name because this was months ago, but they have a facility in Texas, I believe, that they're doing some of those other modalities for first responders that I may end up going and checking out that facility. So there are a lot of options out there, which is wonderful, because what may work for one first responder may not work for another one. And that's a whole thing. We do not treat people cookie cutter fashion. That's it. Because they are individuals. Everybody comes in with different personal and work histories, and we really have to get into that and meet them where they're at and be as effective as possible, as quickly as possible, so that they can get back to their jobs, their families, their lives, or retirement.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm all about getting back to your lives, your family, and retirement too. Now, listeners out here are probably wondering, you said a whole lot of stuff about what's going to happen here, the EMDR, the TMS, so on and so forth. Does insurance cover this stuff?
Insurance does cover EMDR. The TMS, I do not know. Neurofeedback is, I believe, dependent on which insurance company that you're dealing with.
Okay. Yeah, I know it's good. It's a good question there. Oh, Doc, you got so much stuff I want to really pick your brain about. I really do.
Part two.
Tell us what you know about moral injury. It's something new I've been learning about. I've been hearing about. I haven't really delved into it yet. The morale injury.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, morale injury.
I do believe, and I've talked to a lot of first responders about this. Obviously, everything changed during the pandemic. It really changed after the George Floyd case. That changed quite dramatically because the general public has not as much trust for first responders as they used to have, which is unfortunate. And I think what has happened also is just different generations, because I deal with first responders that are in their 20s all the way up into their 50s or 60s. And a lot of the first responders over 50 say, getting these people in their 20s and 30s has been really challenging because of the different way that they have been socialized. Let's put it that way, in a nice way. So, but there are definitely some problems with that, some tensions between, rookies and administration, and that seems to be clear across the board, whether it is with law enforcement, with firefighters, with hospital personnel. It seems to just cut across all three.
Well, I tell you, Doctor, thanks for sharing that. And that I wanted to go back to what Jeff was asking about the insurance. There are some organizations out there that might help with an emdr session or a counseling session. Jeff, you want to let them know about that other organization that we partner up with? That they got them on our website.
Okay, yeah, we go to worldwide. Wow, too much coffee. Too much coffee. Yeah, worldwide peer support. You check out their page too. There's a lot of information on that page too that gives you information how to obtain help, whether it's for yourself or somebody else that you may be dealing with, that you can reach out to and contact these people. They're 24 hours, 7 days a week. So there's no reason why you can't reach out and help somebody, whether it be you, like I said, somebody else. So check out that page too, worldwidepeersupport.org.
Yeah, I just want to let you know there's some other organizations around the United States that will help with cost. Or, we try in the past if somebody needed treatment, we'd fly them to California, we'd fly them here or whatever else, and then sometimes we'd help them with their therapy sessions or EMDR sessions, depending on how much I have to beg to bring money in, or how many people come and sponsor us or whatever. But we try to offset some cost and make it a little bit easier on them, so they don't have to worry about that.
That's fantastic.
But Julie, Doctor, I'm going to start calling you Doctor now. I just like that.
Dr. Goode.
Good.
I was waiting for that moment. I was waiting for that moment to say that, man.
And that is my real last.
I'm sorry, Skip.
Or I should say that's my real ex-husband's last name. So
Why I would never be a doctor. Not with my last name. No way. Dr. Doer.
Well,
I'm out. I'll set myself out the door. Bye-bye.
Well, Julie, I tell you, there's several people, hopefully a lot of people that's listening to this. And like I said earlier, some people are looking for answers for their loved one, their first responders. Some people are just listening. They're in their police car, filling out paperwork, or they're on a fire truck, just sitting in there to get away from their guys because they just had that run. Whatever the reason, or they just came back from the military and they're suffering. They're in their one-room apartment. They're drinking. They're kind of had that lost look staring at a wall. What would you tell somebody like that right now? You got 30 seconds. What would you tell them?
Reach out. Reach out. You're not alone, because that's one of the most important things, is that you do not isolate. You do not feel like you're in your suffering by yourself. That is very important. There's so many avenues of getting help and saving your life, basically. Really saving your life.
Well, Julie, I know you got contacts in California, some phone numbers, some websites. Could you share some of those right now so the people who are listening can figure out who they can reach out to in California?
Sure. I'll give you my number first. It's Dr. Julie Ann Goode. Phone number is 562-209-1837. The next number is Dr. Heather Williams from Premier First Responder Psychological Services at 949-246-6869. And then there's Siobhan Thompson with Throttle and Thrive. And again, that is the new drug and alcohol rehab facility that's opening in Palos Verdes Estates. Has a beautiful view of the ocean. That number is 805-701-1309. So please reach out.
Well, good.
Even if you just call up and say, I'm suffering, or I'm going through this and I'm wondering what options do I have, or I just need somebody to listen to me for a few minutes. Would you please do that? We are here to support you.
So let me ask you this real quick, because I know we're running out of time here always. But we mentioned earlier the denial. Okay, so I'm going to flip that over to the stigma. What do you tell these people that are thinking about getting help, that are worried about what others may think or say behind their back, and that may be keeping them from getting the treatment or the help they need? What would you say to those who are on that fence?
You have confidentiality. That's what you have. Our sincere help. You have other colleagues who are also suffering and probably in silence. So once somebody opens up and says, hey, I'm going for therapy, go and run with it, because everyone needs therapy at some point. Everyone needs to be listened to and heard and saying, I really need some support here.
One thing, if somebody lives on the East Coast or somewhere, if they call you and they can't get direct to you, would you steer them somewhere else? Or is there stuff you can do on Zoom or through the computer to help them out?
Initially I would, but then because of state laws, I would have to refer them back to their home state, because we can only do therapy within our own home states. Unfortunately, I wish they would finally get a nationwide licensing going here, because we're in a technological age here, especially after COVID. But anyways, we do have a referral service. We will refer them back, but at least make that first initial call, and we will help you as much as we possibly can.
That's exactly what I was looking for. That right there. And I know last week was an eye opener to a lot of people walking around that looked like they had a stigma about this mental health stuff, and really, seemed like the older people. And I put myself in that category. I know I'm not 29, but I do play that role. But they were just totally non-receptive to peer support, to the mental health stuff like that, and it just seemed like they were just totally driven away from it. So with that being said, for the people who are interested or questioning whether or not they have a problem or not, what are some of the telltale signs that they can look for within themselves that realize that, hey, I do have a problem. I really should be looking out for myself?
The first red flag is speaking about hopelessness and helplessness, because that's telltale signs of suicidal thoughts. And they do happen. That I would say for most people, at one point or another, because of too much stress, they've had suicidal thoughts. That's normal. Normalizing this, and I would say too, Jeff, and thank you for bringing that up. I would say that is that armoring that they're walking around with. I'm okay. I'm the helper. I don't need help. I do not want to appear that I'm weak. But listening, and when you see signs that people are suffering, say something to them. Do not let them suffer in silence. Go over and support them and say, hey, talk to peer support. Here are some numbers. Get help. We've all done it. I've been in therapy too. So I'm
And don't break the balls during the day room or sitting around in the round table having a discussion. Don't break the balls then. Let's take them around the corner, have a one-on-one, quiet, without earshot of other people and stuff too. It's better for both you two. Because you're not grandstanding for one, trying to help somebody for the other one, and putting them down at the same time. So yeah, take that conversation elsewhere. Skip.
exactly.
Thanks, Jeff. Julie, we always ask this, is there a quote or a phrase that kind of resonates in your mind or heart when you're going through some stuff that keeps you going? Do you have one of those quotes or phrases that
I do.
use?
When I was doing general rehab work for 5 years, there was a sign on one of the houses that says, I'm going to make the rest of my life the best of my life. And at 59, I truly believe that I am having a glorious, glorious life. I'm traveling around the world and I'm meeting great people and doing wonderful work. So that's my phrase. I'm going to make the rest of my life the best of my life.
Well, Dr. Julie Ann Goode, thank you for being on the show. I'd like to thank all the listeners out there for listening to us. If you need us, go to burnoutpodcast.org and click and message me or Jeff. Just put a message in there. Me and Jeff will answer your message, and we'll get you in contact with the numbers that Julie gave out. You can also go on there and see our sponsors on burnoutpodcast.org. And we just like to tell everybody, go home tonight, shut your phone off, shut your scanner off, and get some rest.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Skip.
Thank you for listening to Burnout. Burnout is brought to you by the Worldwide Peer Support. You can visit Burnout Podcast at burntoutpodcast.org or visit Worldwide Peer Support at worldwidepeersupport.org. Your hosts for the Burnt Out Podcast are Skip O and Jeff the Old Guy. Produced by Sean P. Neal. A MyPodcast.media production.